Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome inside the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Sunday afternoon. Hopefully, you are not dying of heat on this day. It seems like it's hot everywhere around the country, particularly in California on the West Coast. But here today to talk about some of our annual NFL picks and predictions. Really excited about this. We do this every single year. This year, we are going to include a point system for these picks, and we'll kind of bake it into our weekly picks that we do every single year, and the winner gets to receive a jersey from the other two. So excited to get to all of that, and joining me to do so are my guys Tyler and Alex. Tyler, we'll start with you, man. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. Can't wait to win my yellow jersey.
Yeah, we got to make it 2 years in a row of a yellow jersey. So yeah, as Diego points out, Tyler did participate in the crossover event earlier this afternoon. So I know the guys over at Chargers Unleashed shoot, planned a big time event over there. So go check that out. Alex is here as well, man. Alex, how you doing?
Doing good. I said yesterday on the Q&A episode that I would give Steven the floor for a minute and a half of Utah talk. I don't think he wants to do it today. But Rutgers is 1-0, baby. Don't come back to me when they finish 5-7. But yeah, very happy about that.
Nah, Rutgers looked pretty good yesterday. I watched them a little bit. Offense kind of, outperformed what I was expecting. But yes, Utah definitely should have won that game. It's unfortunate that they didn't. But we'll see how the rest of the season goes. Still pretty optimistic. But all right. So like I said, we are here today to talk about our NFL picks and predictions. We are basically going to give our predictions for basically all of the major awards: MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Rookies of the Year, and Coach of the Year. And then we're going to go person by person and give each of our 7 playoff teams from both of the conferences, as well as our Super Bowl picks. So it should be a fun conversation. I love doing these things and being able to kind of look around the league and see where everyone is at after all of this stuff. So that being said, we do have a Google sheet as always. So let's kick it off with MVP pick here first and foremost. Alex, we'll start with you, man. Who is your pick for MVP this season?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you could go on this one. Josh Allen is probably a pretty heavy favorite. Just pulling up the odds right now. He's plus 600, Mahomes plus 750, Brady 800, Rodgers and Herbert both plus 900. I'm going to go a little bit off the board in comparison to those names, and I'm going to put in Lamar Jackson as my 2022 NFL MVP. I just think he's in a contract year. The Ravens obviously are due for some positive regression after all the injury hell they went through in 2021 with the adjusted games loss of plenty of starters. Lamar got hurt himself, and then they had to play Tyler Huntley, and then obviously the second half of the season, just kind of collapsed for them. But they looked like a, Super Bowl team those first 2 months of the year. And then, so obviously the injuries and everything happened. I just think Lamar due for a bounce back year himself. Compared to what he was last year. And I think we'll show why he, still deserves to be in that top 10 quarterback discussion. And, the talent that he has around him is just going to be significantly improved just by getting guys back, some of the moves the Ravens have made. And so I have him as my pick, and maybe they do go with a Josh Allen or Justin Herbert because, you want to give the new guy the award. Lamar Mahomes has already won. They're obviously not going to give it to Rodgers again, probably, because he's won it 2 times in a row now. But I think Lamar is just in the most interesting situation. And I think if he, outperforms what was kind of expected of him last year, I think that he is a really good MVP bet if I was to place one down.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised by that one. I didn't think that's where you would go. Were you higher than us on Lamar Jackson in the quarterback rankings?
I don't remember where I put him. I think I had him at 7. Okay. Because I had Stafford at 6, I think, and then I had Burrow at 8. Yeah. So I am a little bit higher on him relative, but I didn't expect to be there either. Like, I just sort of thought about it and was like, oh, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, or Patrick Mahomes. But the more I thought about it, the position Lamar's in right now, the need to perform, in addition to just how high I guess I am on the Ravens, which we'll get to when we do like our standings discussion. I think all the things just kind of lean in his way.
Yeah, I definitely did not think of Lamar Jackson. I'll just say that much. My answer is going to be very standard, but I kind of have to go with it. And I do have Justin Herbert as the guy winning the MVP. It does come down to one of really, 4 quarterbacks or so. We'll definitely see some changes with maybe Mahomes or Rodgers just because of the guys that they're working with. I do think Herbert, the leader in adjusted EPA per play since 2010, has won the MVP every single time except for once when it was Cam Newton. Justin Herbert was 5th last year, and you watch Arjun's video he hosted a guest on who talked about bad luck, that Herbert with just regular luck, and he did compute this somehow in a statistical model, would have led the league in adjusted EPA per play. I think when you have Herbert, just the way he plays, the low turnover worthy rate, the great weapons around him, I just think that that's very stable. And if just the awful thing that happened, which was the drops, the bad luck, if that all just returns to normal, he's automatically top 3, top 2, if not first in the league in that category. I think he's just trending that way. I think this is, the final argument for Herbert, really, even though he was one of the best quarterbacks last year, was, well, he didn't win any games. I do think that they're on their way to win some games this year. God, I hope so. They certainly will win more than 9. And if they make the postseason and have 11 wins, 12 wins, and he looks about the same at quarterback, I think he'll win MVP.
Yeah, to your question earlier, Alex did have Lamar higher than either of us. Obviously, you did your stats list, so Lamar wasn't on yours. I had Lamar at 9, and then Alex had Lamar at 7. So Alex is a big Lamar guy, apparently. So excited to see what he, honestly, like I think people kind of forget what he was like last year before that, and because he obviously got injured. So I do think that the Ravens in general, they'll make this conversation later on. I do think they'll be very good. I'm really torn with this conversation. I do agree with what Alex was saying. I think there's going to be a little bit of voter fatigue when it comes to Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, and I almost feel like whoever is the 1 seed in AFC is going to get the MVP, right? Like whether that's Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. That could certainly be kind of what ends up happening. True to that point, I am going with Josh Allen. I picked him last year. There's a good amount of media love for Josh Allen, more so than I feel like Justin Herbert, and they're just ready to like crown him the next great quarterback and make him the number 1 quarterback in the league. And I can just kind of feel that media attention for him. And I do think the Bills are going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year. So I love what they did in terms of adding Khalil Shakir and some of the draft picks that they have made, as well as adding Von Miller and things like that. So I am going with Josh Allen again this year. Like I said, I just think the Bills are the best team in the AFC, best team in the league. Mm-hmm. And because they're kind of going to be the team that like comes out of the gauntlet of the AFC, I think it's just kind of natural for me to put Josh in that conversation.
Yeah, he would have been my other pick, honestly, especially when you talked about the AFC standings and the way that's just going to turn out. It does naturally look like the Bills are that 1 seed.
Yeah. Alex, how close do you think you were to going with, obviously Justin Herbert, our guy here, as MVP?
It was really close. I mean, I kind of went with Lamar just based on what I think the best bet was and the upside there. But I mean, obviously, I think it could go to Herbert, Allen, or Mahomes very much in that number 1 seed in the AFC discussion. Yeah. A couple years, Arjun, but I think Joe Burrow could theoretically be in that discussion too if the Bengals are the 1 seed, and
sure,
that kind of narrative as well.
Oh man, if the Bengals are the 1 seed, Joe Burrow's absolutely getting MVP. I think even if they're like a 2 or 3 seed, I think they get.
I mean, especially with the media attention towards Joe Burrow. Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of just interesting picks this year. I think it's a really deep group. Like you could even make a case just in the same way that Lamar won in 2019 and Cam won in 2015, that you have like a Jalen Hurts or Trey Lance that kind of come out of nowhere as well to have those types of years. So I think really it's going to come down to obviously who has the best individual quarterback season, and you can make an argument for a lot of guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious to see how the media will kind of look at Matt Stafford Obviously, the NFC and the AFC are in very different states of their conferences, right? But if the Rams end up getting the 1 seed, if they're kind of resurging, and he's had like this elbow injury that no one really knows about, but if Stafford comes out, leads the Rams to like the 1 seed in the NFC, I'm curious how much pull that would have versus an AFC team. All right, so I'll give my pick next for defensive player of the year. We'll move on to that pick. Is that the one that was next, or is it offensive player of the year?
Defensive.
Okay, defensive player of the year. So again, I think the Chargers definitely have some candidates for this regard. I think Joey Bosa could certainly end up winning this award. I think Khalil Mack, if he is able to be kind of classic version of Khalil Mack, like he said, both of those guys will end up being in the conversation. We'll see about Derwin if he is able to potentially play at that level. But I'm actually going to go with Joey's younger brother, Nick Bosa. I think his season last year was not talked about enough, coming off of an ACL surgery. And that's typically something that we see guys kind of take a little bit of time, usually about a full season until they're back. So into kind of their previous form. We're looking at like Cortland Sutton is an example that people kind of are familiar with here. And when you look at the numbers, though, it's kind of crazy where Nick Bosa ended up at, despite coming off of an ACL tear. He was 6th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. He was 6th on Pro Football Focus's as well. He was 4th in total pressures with 75 and 4th in sacks in 16. And like nobody talks about him. Everybody, when asked about like best edge rusher in the league, it's always Myles Garrett, TJ Watt. And I think Nick Bosa, another year being healthy, is really going to tear this league apart. And so Nick Bosa is my pick for defensive player of the year.
Yeah, that's a really good pick there. I guess I'm assuming then you're assuming that Nick Bosa is having a better season than Joey, or do you just think that's the way people would vote?
I think that Nick does. I think Nick is a better player, and I think he will have a better season. I also think that if Khalil and Joey are both playing at their peaks, that they will take votes away from the other. And,
Gotcha.
because I feel like people who would vote for a Chargers defensive player of the year would not vote for, it's either or, it's not both. So
Yeah.
I think Nick Bosa should be in the conversation more often with best edge rusher in the league. And I get that he wasn't healthy in 2020, but coming back from an ACL injury and doing what he did last year is crazy good. And I think he takes it to another step this year.
Yeah, that's a good call. I don't know who's next, so I guess I'll just jump in. As much as I hate taking the standard answers at this point, if I'm predicting who am I not putting money on, because I would probably take a better bet, to try to win some more money. But until it doesn't work, it's Aaron Donald for me. You look at the guy who's had 85 pressures and 15 sacks for like 5 years in a row. And there might be some legit voter fatigue there as well. Like, oh, Aaron Donald again. There's another 90 pressures and 20 sacks or whatever. He's just so darn impressive. And even with as good as Nick Bosa's numbers were, Aaron Donald was doing this, had better numbers, 2nd in pressures in the entire league, 15 sacks. Again, voter fatigue, maybe we could be in there, but I just think until it doesn't work, he's kind of the guy I would always vote for or predict to be defensive player of the year.
Yeah. Aaron Donald could be a shoe-in answer every year. And I feel like, honestly, there's less voter fatigue with him than there would be with Rodgers, for example.
Sure.
Partially because Rodgers is an asshole sometimes. But I mean, just in terms of like how they are as, I feel like Aaron Donald's impact on defense, there's honestly no other player that comes close to where he is. Versus obviously all the quarterbacks have the same level of impact. So I do think that Aaron Donald's a solid choice. I'm going to go with a guy who was in his rookie season last year and, could have honestly gotten some defensive player of the year attention. I'm going to go with Micah Parsons. I don't like giving awards to Cowboys in general, but I mean, just everything that he is going to have to do for that defense in terms of being its most valuable player, whether it's, in coverage, on the edge. I just think he's going to have the opportunity to rack up a lot of stats, which are obviously important. I think he's going to, the way that he finished last year, particularly that last month of the season, was just honestly one of the best defensive stretches that I've seen from honestly any player, and they gave it to TJ Watt last year. Obviously, Micah was in his rookie year, and TJ had the better year anyway. But if we're talking about Micah going into his second year, there's always that Cowboys media bias too. And so when it comes to that kind of stuff, I do think Mike is going to have the most attention on him, the most, attempts to kind of, make big plays that people notice and get all that attention. So I kind of go with Micah there. Obviously, I think Aaron Donald's a great choice. So is TJ Watt. So is Myles Garrett. So is Nick Bosa, who I think is actually 5th to Micah Parsons 4th on the odds list that I'm looking at right now, followed by Chase Young and then Joey Bosa. But I think
Chase Young is ahead of Joey.
They're tied at plus 2,000.
What on
Is
earth?
he not even playing?
Yeah, I don't. Maybe this hasn't been updated since the news of them putting him on the pup list. I don't know, but I just like Micah Parsons a lot as a bet.
Yeah, as a bet, absolutely. I think I'm curious to see what kind of happens with his pressure rate, because last year it was like historically high, and he's a great player, but if that comes down at all and he's still doing the hybrid thing, I'm curious to see kind of what happens there. All right, let's move on to offensive player of the year. Tyler, we'll start with you on this one. Who you got?
God help me. Offensive player of the year. So obviously I voted, Justin Herbert for MVP, so I won't put him there. I'm just going to go non-quarterback here. Just that I don't want to put a quarterback here, even though they might win it. I'm going to go Jamar Chase. I think that.
Damn it. That's what I was going to say.
I know.
I mean, you guys can pick the same person, right?
You can pick the same person. That is okay.
Yeah, I know.
I just think what he did as soon as he stepped onto the field or whatever it took, it was incredible last year. He was the best receiver in the draft. He did win Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, right? Yeah, he did. Yeah. I just think the natural progression is him winning Offensive Player of the Year. He's just a special talent in a very, 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 very good situation that will keep his floor very, very high, and he's already got a high ceiling. So I think Jamar Chase, if I'm not picking any quarterbacks, Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think Jamar Chase is a really solid pick too, which is why he's my pick to win Offensive Player of the Year as well. Just everything that he's going to have to do for that Bengals offense, I think he kind of goes up stats wise from where he was last year, building that connection with Joe Burrow further and everything. I think that Jamar Chase has a great chance to win Offensive Player of the Year, but it also depends on how they give it out, because sometimes Offensive Player of the Year is just the second best quarterback award, as it has been in previous years. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go that way too. So if I have Lamar winning MVP, I would be surprised if it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. If you have Josh Allen winning MVP, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, Lamar or Herbert, right? So I would go with Chase there if I'm just picking best non-quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Teresa pointing out Jonathan Taylor, also very fair. My thing with Jonathan Taylor is like, how much longer can he keep up this kind of workload? Like he's been extremely durable so far. And we can kind of maybe assume a little bit more of some injuries this year. So I am going with another receiver. I think that's kind of where the league is trending at this point, where MVP is going to be quarterback. Defensive Player of the Year probably always going to be a pass rusher, and Offensive Player of the Year largely going to be a wide receiver, unless you have like a historically great running back season. I am going with Jamar Chase's former college teammate, Justin Jefferson. Yeah. To me, he's kind of like that next guy. And, if we're not talking about a historically great Justin Herbert and a historically great Cooper Kupp, I think everybody really is talking more about Justin Jefferson. Over what he's done over the last 2 years, and he's not in as much of a great situation as Jamar Chase. Doesn't obviously have the quarterback, but they're going to get him in kind of the Cooper Kupp role with Kevin O'Connell and a lot of that Rams staff, and he played in the slot in college, so he's very familiar with that. And I think he's increased his yards, his touchdowns every single year. I think he'll do that again this year. And I think we could realistically see him get close to 2,000 yards receiving, 18 touchdowns. I think it is within the realm of possibility for Justin Jefferson as they kind of make this transition to that Rams offense.
So what you're saying is I have a chance at winning more than 2 games this year in fantasy football.
What I'll tell you is that I had the 4th pick in fantasy football, 2 redrafts leagues, and I took Justin Jefferson in both of them because I feel so strongly about Jefferson really just lighting the league up this year.
Yeah, and I absolutely could see that. And at this point, I expected it. It's a top 3 guy. Justin Jefferson would have been in my top 3 if I had to make a little bit of a list. It really just comes down to who the quarterback is, and I think Burrow will kind of make it more interesting. They'll probably get into the playoffs. They'll probably win more games. Again, not that wins are a wide receiver stat by any means, but I just think that people like Chase. Like Chase is the new thing, and there's no receiver in this upcoming class that is going to do anything like that. Yeah, but either one's good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move on to Coach of the Year here. Alex, we'll go back to you first. Who you got?
Yeah, a lot of different ways you could go about Coach of the Year, because sometimes it's just the coach of the best team. Sometimes they're give it to the Harbaugh, Belichick, or Tomlin, like, that kind of year, or they give it to the best new coach. And I feel like that is what has been happening recently. And I'm going to go, because of where the floor and ceiling for this team are, I'm going to go with Doug Peterson. I think that it's kind of a simple pick. Yeah, Eagles legend Doug Peterson, of course. But yeah, I mean, all you have to do is not kick people. And if you
I literally was going to say the same thing.
All you got to do is not do that and not be a disaster and not abandon your team in a city. And like, you could probably win Coach of the Year. Listen, if Trevor Lawrence takes that 2nd-year jump and Jacksonville is a 7-8 win team, or like 6 to 8 win team, I think you can make the case for it. And so for me, considering the position Jacksonville was in previously, and what it, can be kind of with everyone they added, yeah, they overpaid. But still, I think that's a team that on paper looks a lot better roster wise. And, they obviously have a much better coach than they did last year. So for me, considering, you could go Brian Dable here with the Giants, Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins. But for me, I think Doug Peterson has kind of the most experience and also the best chance to have success relative to what the expectations are for the Jags.
Yep, 100% agree. That's exactly who I put. You made the exact same
Wow,
point.
You guys are very in sync today.
Yeah, absolutely. Do I think he'll have the best team? Do I think he'll win the AFC South? No, but like Alex said, the bar is so low. Like it's a perfect combination. You're replacing Urban Meyer, okay, piece of cake. You didn't win many games last year, so you just have to win, 5 more, and hey, that's a big jump, right? And then you get to work with Trevor Lawrence, and if the quarterback improves and looks good, you can really check a lot of boxes there. And so I think, Doug Peterson and working with Mike McCoy as the quarterback coach for Trevor Lawrence, I think he has.
Oh my gosh, I forgot he was on that staff. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that it's a good pick for sure, I think, and then also it's a pretty decent betting pick, I think.
Yeah, I've thought about going with one of the new coaches. Kevin O'Connell. Excuse me, not McConnell. Kevin O'Connell was kind of who I first envisioned. The Vikings are gonna make my NFC list. Spoiler alert. Brandon Staley, I feel like, is certainly a good candidate, but I feel like the media is so split on Brandon Staley at this point that I would almost have a hard time envisioning them choosing him unless the Chargers were like definitively the 1 seed. So I'm going with not necessarily an old head, like Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, always candidates, of course. But I was pretty surprised to find out that Matt LaFleur has never won Coach of the Year. And I think a lot of that obviously has been like, well, Aaron Rodgers is winning these MVP awards. Devontae Adams is doing all this stuff. Defense has kind of been an issue. Special teams kind of been an issue. So I think there's just like this Aaron Rodgers bias cooked into how people see Matt LaFleur. But I think they've made a lot of adjustments on defense. I think Rich Bisaccia coming over as special teams coordinator should help a lot there. And I think he'll kind of turn that Packers offense into really what he wants even more without Devontae Adams. And I think, working with Aaron Rodgers, and like Alex said, he's kind of an asshole at this point. So I think he ultimately guides the Packers to the 1 seed and finally wins Coach of the Year in 2022.
Yeah, not a bad one. Went the opposite direction with the good team. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, good team. All right, we'll go to offensive rookie of the year. Tyler, we'll start with you on this one.
Ooh, okay. So a lot of the players that I liked in this draft went to terrible places.
Right.
So it's very hard to really pick because, you know, whoever wins this might not even been, the fourth or fifth best receiver or running back in the class. It's just like they went to the better situation. And I think, and, I did like this guy anyway. I'm going Treylon Burks, which is definitely like he was not my wide receiver 1 in the end. I think he was wide receiver 3 for me. But I do think he went to a situation where the quarterback is competent. And I know that they'll pass for some yards and some touchdowns. And, I think his role, maybe he won't be a dominant wide receiver, in terms of route running and whatnot, but I think his role in Yak and what you can do with him is so exciting, and it translates, or it should translate pretty easily. Even with Mike Williams last year, not that they're quite the same player, you can get him involved in a jump ball situation or a Yak shallow crosser situation, and you can put up stats that way as he refines his craft. So I think Burks working with Tannehill, again, not my wide receiver 1, entering the draft, but he went to a pretty decent spot compared to the rest of these guys. I'm going with him.
Yeah, I think that's a fine pick. You liked him in the draft, and he's certainly going to be getting a lot of playing time. I think, ultimately this award, and more so than any other award, is obviously an opportunity award, and so it's really hard to kind of siphon through like, okay, who's going to be a top tier option as a receiver, who's going to be like a legitimate RB1 for their team, like Breece Hall in a 50-50 committee. I really like Breece Hall, who's my RB1. I'm not picking him here because I think he's splitting carries, right? Drake London was my wide receiver 1. I love his talent. I don't love his situation with Marcus Mariota, Kyle Pitts soaking up a lot of picks. Chris Olave, I considered him for sure, but again, he's splitting a lot of touches. The unquestioned RB1, wide receiver 1 on any of these teams is Dameon Pierce, and I loved his talent. And that Lovie Smith, a defensive coach, is going to want to run the shit out of the ball to keep Davis Mills protected. And so I think Dameon Pierce is easily going across 1,000 yards. I think he's going to get 200 plus carries this year as the Texans just try and be as slow and old school as possible to protect Davis Mills. So from sheer opportunities, I am going with the guy that I really went to bat for in the draft, Dameon Pierce.
Both good picks. I mean, I think Dameon, just in terms of opportunity, has probably the best odds of the 3 guys that we're gonna say here. I went with another receiver, a little bit off the board, but I went with George Pickens.
Okay.
And I think that, the argument for him is obviously he's kind of like taking the league by storm in like training camp and preseason. Obviously,
really
that's not like, the end all be all, but I really do believe in his talent. Kenny Pickett is going to have to rely on him a lot. There's Deontay Johnson there, Najee Harris, but I still think in terms of, a quarterback getting to know his receiver, I think those two are kind of going to hit it off chemistry wise. Now, the argument against him, right, is obviously you have Kenny Pickett there and you have George Pickens, but I don't think of Kenny Pickett as like a dominant, like, Justin Herbert, like esque Roy candidate, sort of. Like, I think of him as a bit more probably a game manager a bit this year, especially with how the Steelers kind of run things. So I think that kind of is going to open more of an opportunity for Pickens to get that vote, as opposed to some of the other wide receivers who obviously Jameson Williams and his situation. And Olave is a good pick, but it's also like Michael Thomas is coming back. We don't know if Michael Thomas is healthy, but if he's there, then I don't think any other wide receiver is capable of winning an award, given how the Saints run that offense. So I went with George Pickens.
Yeah, no, I totally get that in terms of somebody who's got a big opportunity. We'll see what happens with that quarterback battle. I feel like Mitch Trubisky is going to get at least a chance to start there.
If Trubisky gets a chance to start there, then I get a chance to change my pick. But I still do think it'll be Pickett to start the year.
Fair. The one who was like really hard for me to like, I don't want to say like outcast, but the one that I couldn't get out of my mind for this award was Sky Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Being in that Chiefs offense, I think he's got such a high ceiling, but there's a lot of like Juju love there, and of course Kelsey's going to be soaking up a ton of targets. So I think Sky Moore could be a certain dark horse there, but I think he's just in a pretty crowded situation.
Yeah, that's really what it came down to. And even Christian Watson with the Packers, like, oh, that would be, potentially an unquestioned wide receiver one, but it's really not. It's kind of muddied. And maybe after 4 games, it's like, oh, okay, Watson or Sky Moore, these guys are getting 10 targets a game. Whoops. But we really can't tell that at this point. So I'm not surprised we didn't go Moore or Watson here. But I have to wait and see with those guys.
I think Watson is still battling an injury
Oh,
too.
is he?
So I think he's dealing with a hamstring injury or something. He's like barely practiced. That's why Romeo Doubs has such a fantasy football following right now, is because he's been basically the guy there outside of Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
All right, our final category here, defensive rookie of the year. My heart really, really, really wants to say Devin Lloyd in this situation. I think, they want to do a lot of like pass rushing hybrid stuff with him, which is why they supposedly drafted the Wyoming linebacker. Thank you. Was blanking on his name there for a second. Obviously they paid Foyesade Oluokun a lot of money as well. So they kind of envision Devin as kind of this hybrid player. I don't love that in terms of, winning defensive rookie of the year, or frankly for his ability overall, but we'll see what happens there. So I'm going to go with Quay Walker, a guy who I think is going to make a big time difference, immediate impact on a legitimate contending team, get a lot of tackles playing next to Devondre Campbell, and be able to start right away. Again, one of the few like surefire starters that's going to put up a lot of numbers. So Quay Walker was my pick here for defensive rookie of the year.
Interesting. I definitely would not have guessed you'd go with that player. I know you really liked him come out of the draft, and he definitely is a good player. They seem really excited about him. So that's definitely the interesting pick. And my theme of the day is going with non-interesting picks. So Aiden Hutchinson, the
best
player in the draft. I mean, he's the best player in the draft. I think people will just like his story as well. It's something you want to vote for. And, Detroit becomes a half decent team and wins some games, and he looks great, and Dan Campbell and restore the roar and all that sort of stuff. And he is a pass rusher. Like, there will, in theory, be those numbers. It really feels like he's the guy to win it this year. So I'm going with him.
Yeah, I'm also going with Aiden Hutchinson. So I think me and Tyler are very in sync today.
Jinx.
I mean, there are other candidates. Obviously, you could go with Kayvon Thibodeau. I think Kayvon Thibodeau, just from the jump, is going to have like a little bit more of a growing pain. And then outside of that, it's like you go Quay Walker. You could go for another one of the edge rushers. A cornerback probably is a tough sell to like win rookie of the year, unless, Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley just get a lot of picks. So for me, it's very simple. Just Aiden Hutchinson's going to have probably the most sacks out of anybody in this rookie class, and I think he'll obviously kind of get the most media attention as well. Hard Knocks helps with some of that stuff as well. But yeah, I went with Aiden Hutchinson here.
Yeah, I went and looked at the winners of these two awards, particularly for rookies, right, since 2000. Any guesses on? So there were 2 cornerbacks to win defensive rookie of the year since 2000. Any guesses on those 2 players?
Revis, Ramsey?
No. No.
Since 2000? See, this
since
is
2000. Only 2 corners since 2000. Both of them are kind of recently, I should say.
Both of them are recent. Draw a blank.
First one, Marshawn Lattimore.
Oh, okay.
I guess that he would be the second one, but first one, I guess, Marcus Peters for the Chiefs.
Oh,
when he had like 7 interceptions that year.
Right.
So those are the only 2 defensive backs. Everybody else has been a pass rusher, a linebacker, or a defensive tackle.
Yeah, so, it's really hard, just I think, to win that award that way, unless you get a lot of receptions, which is possible with Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley. Just don't see it, even if they do, being enough to surpass a 10-plus sack kind of season for Aiden Hutchinson.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, it just came down to like being a part of a winning team and you're putting up numbers at the same time. So That's why I went with Quay Walker. All right, let's get to some of our playoff picture. Do we want to start with the NFC or the AFC?
AFC.
All right, let's start with the AFC. Tyler, we'll start with you. We'll do our 4 division winners and then the wild card teams. So walk us through your thought process here and who you have as the 4 division winners in the AFC.
Okay, AFC feels a bit like a shoe-in at this point. So I'm going with the Bills with the 1 seed. I've flip-flopped between this one, but I've convinced myself at this point that the 2nd seed is actually going to go to the Chargers.
Hey,
The AFC West. Again, I'm trapping myself here for, you should prove it first. You should show it first. But I've always felt the Chargers were the better team on paper. But it really feels like that this year. And the Chiefs are going through some turnover of their own. So I just think the Chargers, it's their time. So the Chiefs do not win the AFC West. Thank goodness. This was a tough one for me. I went one of the AFC North teams. It was between the Bengals and the Ravens for me. I just kind of think the Bengals have done enough this offseason. It's a bit of a surprise because I poo-pooed on them last year. I didn't realize that their defense would have carried them throughout the entire postseason. Definitely did not expect that. So I'm going Bengals there. AFC South, I almost don't care, but I'm going to go with the Colts. And then 5 through 7. Oh, sorry. Do you want to go there or no?
No, we'll wait and we'll each do the division winners first. So, all right, Alex, you wanted to give your 4 division winners in the AFC?
Yeah, I'll start with the 1 seed, and I kind of previewed it earlier, but I do have the Ravens as the 1 seed. I have them winning the North. Just again, feel they're due sort of for a bounce back year, positive injury regression, all those sort of things. Obviously, very good coaching there in terms of John Harbaugh, and I think Lamar is going to go back to that 2019, 2020 type of form. So all of those factors combined, I just have the Ravens there. My 2 seed, I do have the Buffalo Bills. As Tyler said, yeah, maybe you could talk yourself into the Dolphins or Patriots being a wild card team, but I just don't see either of those teams, if the Bills are healthy, having enough to really compete with them. Oh, okay. Get the dislike button ready. I still have the Chiefs winning the AFC West. So you can thumbs down in the comments below. But yeah, I still have to see it from the Chargers. Would love to pick the Chargers to be the 2 seed or be the AFC West winner. But until you beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes once or twice, I still kind of have to go with the Chiefs as the favorite there, even though I do think the Chargers are the better team. And I went with the Colts as the 4 seed. A lot of different directions, I guess, the AFC South could go. I could see, in theory, the Titans winning it if they kind of bounce back. Aside from that, maybe there's a slim Jaguars chance, but it's probably either going to come down to the Colts or the Titans in that division.
Yeah, absolutely. So Chiefs over Chargers, I think is a fine take. I totally understand it. That team, that organization is still way too smart to me. It just came down to their schedule, man. They have the hardest schedule in the league if you're using predictive schedule, strength of schedule, as opposed to based off of last season, and their opening 7 games, I think it is brutal. You're talking about at Arizona, Thursday night against the Chargers, at the Colts, at the Buccaneers, home against the Raiders, home against the Bills, at the Niners to open the season. And it's a season in which you're replacing all of these starters. And, they started last year and we were not able to capitalize on that. Other teams were not able to capitalize on that. But I do think that changes this year. So I sticking with the theme here. I'm going with the Colts at 4 as well. I'll start there and we'll keep it a little more interesting. The Colts on paper should have been a playoff team last year. They were 12th in weighted DVOA on offense and 7th in weighted DVOA on defense. It really was just a bizarre meltdown at the end of the season, thanks to Carson Wentz and a lot of other things too. There was COVID games mixed in there for them as well. But I think Matt Ryan coming in and just kind of stabilizing that room, that position will do them very well. I'm like I said, a little concerned about Jonathan Taylor potentially getting injured this year, but I think the Colts are just too well-rounded of a team, and I think they ultimately do make the playoffs and win the division this year. At number 3, I do have the Chargers winning the AFC West. I have them at 3. Again, I would love for them to be higher on this list. I would love to be more confident in winning the division, but I do think the difference in schedule does, kind of play a part there for them. At number 2, I have the Ravens. Alex mentioned this earlier, the team that had the most losses adjusted to injury in Football Outsiders history, which I think is only like 12 years, but still no team that Football Outsiders has ever tracked has been as injured as the Baltimore Ravens. I love what they did in the draft. I love what they got in Marcus Williams and things like that. I think they win like 13 games pretty easily, and I think they have the 2 seed and then 1 seed. I do have the Buffalo Bills. To me, best team on paper. I think they really needed a closer on defense. Got that in Von Miller. Love the Khair Elam pick there. Love Khalil Shakir, James Cook. That offense just kind of adding another dimension. And I think they're just like, they know they have to get the 1 seed to kind of get over the hump, because I don't think you want to go play in Kansas City, in LA, or whatever. I think you want teams coming to your house, and the Bills more motivated than others in this conference to get the 1 seed.
Yeah, they had a good offseason. I don't see why they shouldn't be projected to be the favorites in the, well, I guess, sorry, Alex. I just think that they should be the projected 1 seed. They're just very well rounded.
No, they are well rounded, and I think the Ravens, like I said, love what they have done as well. All right, we'll switch up the order a little bit. Alex, we'll start with you. Wild card teams. Who are your 3 wild card teams?
Okay, put the dislike button down. I have the Chargers as the 5th seed. Is that okay? I don't know, but yeah, to me, the Chargers, obviously are going to be in contention for the division, and I think you look at the team they have, they're obviously just a playoff team in that field. I also have the Bengals making it. You could either go Bengals or Ravens kind of winning the division. The Steelers kind of an outside chance too. But yeah, I obviously have to have the Bengals making the playoffs. 7th seed is where things got really interesting for me after that.
Yeah.
And because I want to go like the Titans, but then the Titans are weird and they just lost Harold Landry. Obviously traded AJ Brown and are trying to kind of like seamlessly fit Treylon Burks in there. Maybe if Treylon Burks wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, like Tyler says, but that's not as much of a problem. But I still think they're due for a little bit of regression. Derrick Henry getting a little bit older, coming back from the injury last year. I went with a team that honestly tried to make the playoffs last year with a dead man at quarterback, and that's the Steelers. They were, still week 18 scenarios with the zombified corpse of Ben Roethlisberger throwing the football. Mike Tomlin obviously runs a really tight ship over there. They don't have losing seasons. And I just think that AFC North, you can make the argument that 3 teams from the AFC West make it. You make the argument that 3 teams from the North make it. I just sort of lean towards the AFC West teams beating up on each other a little bit more. And I think the Steelers are obviously always very well coached. And we don't really know what the Broncos and the Raiders are kind of going to be in that way. So I went with the Steelers and Kenny Pickett and George Pickens making the playoffs over some of the other choices. I just think they're due to kind of be back in the playoff hunt. And they were almost in it last year, even when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I really like that pick.
They did make the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Wait, they
got
did?
trounced by the
because
Chiefs.
My God. I forgot they were in the playoffs because they got blown out by the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Oh, geez.
We let them in.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we did.
If the Chargers and Raiders had tied, the Steelers would not have made it. So
wow. Okay, well, that bolsters my argument more because they were already in the playoffs last year with Ben Roethlisberger losing, I assume, 58-0 to the Chiefs. So, yeah.
Yeah, not a bad one. Mike Tomlin, a pretty safe bet there.
All right, Tyler, let's hear your wild card teams next.
Okay, that's not me over here. Then no surprise, I do have the Chiefs, then the Ravens, and then I'm going to go with the Titans to wrap things up pretty quickly here. Chiefs, Ravens, kind of a flip flop. I just think Ravens could win the division, be 3rd, whatever. Chiefs could win the division, be 2nd, whatever. It really just came down to that 7th team, and I guess it's the Titans. I don't really know who else to like. Do I really believe in the Steelers all that much? but there's that Mike Tomlin effect. But then I think the Titans are kind of a safe-ish bet to maybe make it in, and their division's really not that great. Like they could actually win their division as well, and I wouldn't be surprised. So I'm going to put the Titans at 7th because I feel slightly better about their situation, especially in the AFC South.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do agree. I have the Chiefs at 5 as well. Oops. There we go. Make sure I spelled Chiefs right. Obviously a really interesting defensive conversation there with all the young guys. I think ultimately you probably feel better about their future, their short term with all of these young guys. Probably you don't feel so great about it. They were 13th in weighted DVOA last year on defense. I think that probably comes down, and again, I feel like that does contribute to kind of their slow start a little bit. Offense, I feel like should be fine. Should probably still end up being a top 5 unit. At 6, I do have the Bengals. Very curious again, just kind of how everything plays out there because they were on paper not a playoff team last year. If you're talking about like DVOA, they were 12th on offense, which is good. They were actually 24th on defense in weighted DVOA throughout the regular season. And then you kind of flip the script there in the playoffs where offense was bad, defense was like historically good. They were rarely impacted by injury. There were a few nicks and bruises here and there. So what happens if Jamar Chase, misses a few games with a hamstring? What happens if Jonah Williams at left tackle misses a few games with a hip injury or something like that? So I don't think they'll be as healthy as they will be this year. I don't think they will have as easy of a schedule as they do this year. They'll have the 7th hardest schedule in the league. Again, if you're using kind of a predictive model based off of betting predictions there. But I do think their offense will improve again another year in the system, another year with all of those guys. And 7, again, so hard to predict this team. Raiders, Broncos, I feel like could certainly make it interesting there. The Dolphins with their yak group of receivers could certainly make it interesting. I just trust the Titans more at this point than any of those other teams. I feel like there's less turnover. You're not dealing with like a young coach. You're not dealing with injuries. You're not dealing with a lot of turnover. So I feel like the continuity in Tennessee is just going to win the day. And they were the 1 seed last year and like nobody talks about it. And that was with AJ Brown playing only 12 games. Julio Jones was their wide receiver 2, played like 3 games. Ryan Tannehill missed a game or 2. So again, a lot of games lost to injury on that team, and they're still the 1 seed. So I think that kind of talks to you about how good of a coach Mike Vrabel is. So they're my pick in the 7 spot.
Yeah, I get you. Not bad. All right.
Let's AFC Championship game picks. I'll start us off here. Like I said, I'm a big believer in the Buffalo Bills. So I am going to pick the Bills over the Ravens in the AFC Championship game. Going chalk in terms of my playoff seeding, but I just believe in what those teams have done this offseason, the quarterbacks. And, I do think the Buffalo, Josh Allen, do ultimately get over the hump and win the AFC this year.
Yep, I'm halfway there with you. I have the Bills over the Chargers. I think the Chargers actually make it to the AFC Championship, but I don't think there's no chance I could put them to make it to the Super Bowl just yet. You got to show me.
Yeah, I actually am in sync with Tyler again. I picked the Bills over the Chargers. You could talk about I just think the Chargers are one of those teams that even if they don't win the division, they can get hot. Certainly in the playoffs, have a lot of playoff ready players, which is something Staley's talked about in terms of J.C. Jackson and Kyle Van Noy and just guys that know what to win, Sebastian Joseph Day, etc. So I got the Chargers, even though I don't have them winning the division, getting to the AFC Championship game, but I do think it's pretty unanimous for the Bills, obviously, here.
Yeah, Teresa points out this Alex Tyler love affair getting a little spicy tonight.
Yeah.
Why is it spicy?
3 for 3 on the Bills, man. That's a little surprising, but they're such a good team, and I think we all believe in that quarterback and that ecosystem that they have going up there. So I do think the Chargers will win a playoff game. I will say that. Definitely not down on the Chargers by any means. But Bills over Ravens to me is pretty easy. So, all right, I'll start us off with the NFC. much easier to predict the top. I feel like it's pretty much going to be the same. I have Packers as the 1 seed. I have the Bucks as the 2 seed. A little bit more difficult to predict the order of 3 and 4, but I do have Alex's Eagles as the 3 seed. And then I have the Rams kind of regressing a little bit as the 4 seed. So big believer in what the Packers are doing. They were second in offensive weighted DVOA last year, 22nd on defense. So you go out and you get Quay Walker, Devontae Wyatt, you sign Jaron Reed. You're kind of pivoting to like this run first offense defensive team. So I like what they're doing there. The Bucks, I think they're just too talented. They have too much talent across the board, even with the interior offensive line injuries. Adding Shaq Mason, Luke Gadecki, I think is fine. You feel good about that interior. And then on defense, like they're just going to be fantastic. Obviously the Eagles is the big surprise, but I don't believe in Dallas. I frankly don't. They got significantly worse this offseason. And the Eagles did everything you possibly could have except for trade for a star quarterback to improve your roster. So big believer in the Eagles. And then the Rams, just as kind of weird vibes. I don't think that they have great depth across the board. They haven't really ever had great depth across the board. But at some point that has to matter. And I do think it's just so hard to, win a Super Bowl, do all of that stuff, and then come back and like be a 1 seed. So I think the Rams obviously still win their division, but I think they will kind of take a slight step back this year.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. The whole NFC West is a kind of weird one to predict. Alex, you want to go next?
Sure. Okay. I have do I have the same teams? I think I do. So yeah, I mean, no one else is winning that division except for the Packers. Same thing every year. Don't have to do anything but against it. Oh, actually, well, that's wrong. I had the Rams as the 1 seed, but I do have the Packers as the 2 seed coming into this. So, and then you could flip-flop the order of these teams. I think the Bucks take a bit of a step back this year, so I actually have them as the 4 seed. Obviously, just kind of going through a lot of injuries. I don't know how invested Tom Brady is, with his current situation right now. So I do kind of have the Bucks as the 4 seed. Could go either way with 3 and 4 for me, but I do kind of think the Packers and Rams are the class of the NFC, if you will. For up until July, I still kind of believed it was Cowboys as NFC East winner and then Eagles as wildcard team. The Cowboys are going to be starting 95-year-old Jason Peters in place of Tyron Smith, though, and that's going to be a problem. So I do think that the Eagles ultimately, have gotten better, kind of like Steven said, and I think they're kind of a safe pick over the Cowboys now. Obviously, I still think it's going to be pretty close between those 2 teams. I do still have the Cowboys making the playoffs, but I think the Eagles are probably just better at this point.
Yeah, I'm still surprised to see you guys put the Eagles in the 3rd seed. Is it just because of the NFC East?
Did you see what I tweeted out yesterday?
Is it strength of schedule as well?
Yeah, they have the easiest schedule in the league.
So yeah,
and they have the best
NFC
offseason
East.
in the league. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. All right. Not a whole lot different for me here. We actually all have the same 4 teams. It really isn't much of a surprise. It's just the order. I'm a big Rashad White guy, so Bucks go there. And then I do have the Packers. I'm going to go with the Rams and then the Eagles. I definitely have the Eagles as the clear division winner. But I still would have them 4th. I don't know how many games they're really going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Eagles definitely could surprise some people. I mean, this is like the best team that they've had in quite some time, at least on paper. So love what they've done in the trenches. I think it's just going to be so hard to prepare for them on a week-to-week basis. They finally figured out that it's better to run the ball first and foremost with Jalen Hurts as opposed to dropping him back and asking him to pass the ball 45 times. So I do think the Eagles they're going to be so difficult to prepare for on a week-to-week basis, and they have the easiest schedule in the league. So I'll give my wild card picks next. Just so much harder in the NFC to like feel good about these teams. But I do have the Minnesota Vikings as the 5 seed. I have the Cowboys as the 6th seed. I don't feel great. I feel like they're probably going to win like 9 games, 8 games. And then I have the Saints as the 7th seed. So I feel like you could realistically see like the same 7 teams that were in last year and just put them back into the playoffs this year. Obviously, I have the Cardinals and the 49ers missing the playoffs this year, but I just don't feel great about the quarterback situation in San Francisco. I would have felt much better about it if they had just traded Jimmy G, but now there's like that whole weird dynamic that's happening. Their offensive line outside of Trent Williams is apparently quite a disaster. So even though I feel like Nick Bosa is going to be fantastic this season, I'm very worried, I guess, about the 49ers. The Saints almost made the playoffs last year, despite getting like 5 starts out of Trevor Siemian, Ian Book down the stretch. And I think, getting Jameis healthy, getting Michael Thomas healthy, adding Chris Olave, to me, that's like a big shrug emoji at number 7. I just like felt the best about them, I guess, yesterday when I was preparing this.
Yeah, big shrug emoji to a lot of these guys. All right, Alex, go for it.
Yeah, I actually feel pretty enthusiastic about the Saints. I have them in my 5th seed here.
Wow. All right.
And I mean, you kind of mentioned it. If they get a whole season out of Jameis, Michael Thomas, and Olave, like I kind of think they're an automatic 5th seed. Not that like means a whole lot when we're talking about those wildcard teams, but I guess there is the whole like coaching change thing to talk about with Sean Payton retiring. But I just really believe in the Saints and kind of how they should have probably made the playoffs last year if Jameis had stayed healthy. But he was playing well towards the beginning of the season, and I think they're just kind of due for a bounce back. And if you get another theoretical, career year out of Michael Thomas, I honestly think the Saints could still beat the Bucs in that division. I'm not going to say that it happens, but the Saints have always kind of been the Bucs kryptonite in those head-to-head matchups as well.
Yeah.
So I had the Saints at number 5. Number 6, I had the Dallas Cowboys. Just kind of not anyone else I feel really good about to knock the Cowboys out of the playoffs, even if I wanted to with some of the injury problems and everything else they've been having there. Just no one else I would feel confident about taking. And 7 is kind of where things like in the AFC got murky for me, but I took the Niners. I am kind of just betting on the upside of Trey Lance at this point. You could put the Cardinals in this position as well, and I think it would be justified. I don't want to bet against Kyle Shanahan. I feel like he'll just find a way to kind of figure it out with Trey Lance, and obviously I think he'll get better, over the course of the season as well. Kind of one of those dark horse, MVP type candidates as well, like Mahomes was when he, had that kind of, sit year, and then, obviously came in the second year. So if Trey Lance can get hot, I think that's a very dangerous thing for some of the rest of the teams in the NFC as well. So came down to a couple teams. You could go with the Cardinals. You could go with the Vikings as well. But I just kind of went with the upside of the Niners there.
I am surprised because I was the least high on Trey Lance, but I feel the best about him in these rankings. I'm going to go with the 49ers in the 5th seed, and I'm going to go with the Vikings after that, and then I am going to go with the Saints. I don't know how the Cowboys making the postseason. I just think they're just kind of this zombie team of what they used to be, and everyone's kind of older, everyone's kind of hurt. The guys aren't really there anymore, so I don't know. I just feel like they're eventually just going to have to collapse at some point because they've always had a couple of stars who can make it. And listen, Micah Parsons might win Defensive Player of the Year, but I just don't think they have enough there to sustain them throughout the entire year.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand the 49ers pick, and I guess it kind of is counterintuitive of me to say Nick Bosa for Defensive Player of the Year and then not have the Niners in the playoffs. But I just think that the offense is weird vibes this year, and Kyle Shanahan is earned the right to receive some blind trust to a certain extent, but they play a much more difficult schedule than the Cowboys do. Again, NFC East shout out, would be nice to play in that division. But so that's the NFC this year. Arjun taking some dislike to our picks of having the Titans making the playoffs, so we'll see.
I'm with you, buddy.
All right, let's talk about NFC Championship game. Alex, we'll start with you. Who is your pick there?
Oh, I have to do it. Oh, I'm gonna regret it. I'm going Packers over Rams. I'm gonna regret it.
Okay.
Because
I thought you were
Rodgers-
going to put the Eagles in there. That's why you were doing the
No,
regret
no,
thing.
no, no. I love doing the Rodgers hypothetical. He gets back to another Super Bowl and then he'll, get punted in the divisional round or the championship game as always. I don't know. I just believe in the Packers more this year, even though that seems counterintuitive because they lost Devontae Adams, obviously. But I think Rodgers is kind of going to come out, with something to prove, obviously, with some of those young receivers. I don't think their defense really got worse in a way. Obviously, they added some of the pieces we talked about, Quay Walker and stuff earlier. So I just think the Packers still are going to, be there when it comes time for the playoffs. And I think Rodgers, this is finally the year he breaks through in that crowded NFC is, probably one of the weaker NFCs, obviously, we've been through in a while. So I just kind of went with the best quarterback out of that group. And to me, with the Bucs on the decline, I do kind of think that is still the Packers.
Okay. I mean, at some point, Aaron's got to do it, man. Like
at some point, he's got to do it. So maybe this year.
All right, Tyler, who you got here?
He's not doing it this year, is he? It's going to be the Bucs over the Rams. Packers are going to do something really stupid. They're going to be
fighting Rashad Whites.
Heck yeah, baby! Invest while you still can. I obviously the Bucs is the 1 seed, so I believe them slightly more than you guys. The Packers, they'll probably look really, really good, then lose in the first round. So I have Bucs over the Rams.
Yeah, I also have the Bucs. I have them beating the Packers again. In the obviously NFC Championship game. I know that Tom Brady is not necessarily super locked in at this point. Who knows what the heck was going on with that vacation. I just think that the Bucs are clearly the most talented team, most talented roster. And at some point, Tom Brady probably realizes that and gets a little bit more locked in. So I also just don't trust the Packers to beat the Bucs at this point. I don't see any reason why anybody would do that. If you have the Buccaneers losing to the Rams, I would understand that. But I do have Bucs over Packers for the NFC game.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do Super Bowl picks next. I'll kick this one off. I mentioned this earlier. I'm a big believer in the Bills. I have them winning the Super Bowl over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Josh Allen gets his parade, I guess, if you want to call it, and people start talking about him as the best quarterback in the league because of that recency bias. So I just love what the Bills have done this year. That defense, I think, is going to be so good, and they were third in weighted DPOY last year. You add Von Miller into that mix. I just love what they have done over the last couple seasons.
I agree. Bills over Bucs.
I have the Bills over the Packers. I want to see Rodgers in the Super Bowl again. I don't think it's. Yeah. I always love watching him, and just seeing Rodgers and Allen in the Super Bowl would be crazy.
That would be fun.
That would be a ridiculous matchup, like when people, had Chiefs Packers Super Bowl predictions a couple years ago with Mahomes and Rodgers. That would be just a really fun matchup. So I'll go Bills over Packers. I guess we're all unified on the Bills, so we'll all lose together with the Bills if they do collapse in the playoffs. So I guess we can't really lose too many points.
Yeah. So I guess I didn't explain this earlier. So in terms of our jersey bet picks, you get 1 point for having a correct choice here. You get 3 points for getting a seeding of the specific team correct. So obviously, if the Bills win the Super Bowl, all of us get a good amount of points there. So we'll see how that goes. We'll do picks every single week of the season, and as long as obviously as the Chargers are playing. So couple comments in here about the Broncos. I know, Tyler, you're sensitive on time, so I want to be respectful of that. But where are you at with the Broncos this year in terms of potentially making the playoffs or not?
I just don't really. Well, obviously, I don't have them making the playoffs, so there's that. I just don't know if I got to see it. I got to see it, and I got to see it for half a season. I got to see everybody stay healthy. Lord knows the Broncos will go through their litany of injuries like they've done the last couple of years. I don't. There's something about it I just don't really buy. I don't know if is it a trenches thing? I don't know. I just don't really buy it. And the Broncos, could they absolutely make it? Sure, they could make it into the 7th seed or whatever, but you're not this first or second best team in your own division. Very good team, but you're just not the first, second best team in your own division, in my opinion. And just everyone's beating up each other. I just don't really see them making it in.
Yeah, I think the Broncos could make the playoffs. I think Russell Wilson's on the decline, and that's kind of why I don't have them in. Now, I mean, on the decline for Russell Wilson could still mean that he's a top 15 quarterback for sure, but he's been beat up the last couple of years, has had a few surgeries, and is going to just need to do more on that team. I mean, considering the wide receiver unit, like you have Cortland Sutton, you have Jerry Jeudy, I still don't think it's all that proven of a group compared to, having DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So I don't know. I could see them making the playoffs. First year head coach as well, as NFL's Lip points out in the chat. So for me, just a couple too many red flags, and obviously he's going to a division, and Arjun has pointed this out as well, where they're going to play a lot of too high safeties, and Russell Wilson has struggled with that look historically, and I think that this is kind of the beginning of the Wilson decline. If you believe Wilson bounces back from last year, then it's very easy to make a Broncos in the playoffs argument, but for me, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, in terms of the coaching staff, it's a very odd pairing to me, because Russell was obviously in Seattle last year with Shane Waldron, who was the offensive coordinator. And they got off to a rocky start because they wanted to do a lot of like the Kyle Shanahan stuff and go into center, play action, and all this stuff. That's where Shane obviously came from, the Rams. And Russ did not like it. Russ was very vocal about how he was not a fan of the offense there. And so they decided to go back to like the let Russ cook offense, and it worked for them. I don't know if that is going to go as smoothly, if you will, this year in Denver with a first-year head coach who's going to want to obviously allow Russ to be successful, but also assert his culture, assert how he wants his vision for this team. And so it's a very weird pairing schematically, and I don't really have faith that it works out. So that's where I'm at with Denver. It's not a bias thing. I don't love their roster. I think their roster is a little bit overhyped, and I think it's going to take them a while to get the offense really kind of to a point that makes a lot of sense for Hackett and Wilson. And we've seen that, throughout the league, right? Like Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, their first year together was not super pretty in terms of offensive DPOY production and things like that. I think we see a similar struggle in Denver this year. So, all right, there's our picks. Feel free to let us know what you guys think. Quick housekeeping. We're doing a new schedule this year. For the regular season, we'll be going live on every Sunday evening with our initial thoughts and recap. The three of us will be going live on Tuesday with a little bit more affirmation of what happened the previous week, as well as some quick preview of the upcoming week. Arjun and I will be live on Thursdays, and then we'll also do our Q&A on Saturdays. So you still get 3 episodes, if you will, of us, plus a live episode of Arjun on Thursdays. So hopefully you guys are as excited about that as we are. Obviously, week 2 will be a little bit different because that's Thursday Night Football. Other than that, and the Monday night game later on in the year, will be a pretty similar schedule to that. So Tyler, Alex, appreciate the time tonight. Hopefully you guys lose and hopefully I win. I'm probably going to lose like last year, but it's all good, all in good fun. So as always, bolt up. Appreciate all the comments. We'll talk to you guys later.